Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds.
Hi, this is Dr. Roselle. Welcome to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom. We have a great guest with us today that's going to talk about permascaping and food forest here in Arizona with a very unique program. So I'm going to let him introduce himself now. Tell us about who you are, tell us about the organizations you represent, and then we'll go from there. So who are you?
First of all, thank you for having me, Joe, especially Christmas week.
Yep.
I am Jeremy Chevallier. I am the founder of Homegrown Foods, a local 501c3 charity. Currently, we mainly go by Permascaping, permascaping.com, which is a permaculture-based landscaping design, installation, and stewardship service business.
Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
What is permascaping?
Permascaping itself means using permaculture in your landscaping. If you're not familiar with permaculture, specifically, we're talking about regenerating the earth, capturing or generating all of the available resources, right? Sunlight, water, etc. And essentially living in harmony with nature. My goal with this offering is to give people a different option than the sort of conventional landscaping that promotes a lot of turf, that doesn't necessarily
Stone.
Yeah, a lot of
Gravel.
Hardscape, like doesn't necessarily know how to build natural living systems that are going to produce a yield, produce food for people, for wildlife, produce habitat, harvest rainwater. That's really our focus, and people are loving it.
Okay, so I want to dive into this a little bit because this is something that I just don't think there's a lot of general knowledge. And when I talk to people about this type of planting, I think that they are very single-minded when they think about it. They're like, you're right. That perma landscaping, aesthetically, it looks way better. But they don't understand there's water savings, there's a huge difference when it comes to temperature, and then just the types of animals or biodiversity you're going to have. And then, of course, everything that you see with this type of landscaping actually goes down below the ground. Mm-hmm. So you're really bringing back. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the benefits of going from just a decorative system that you get from your home builder to something like this?
Absolutely. Major benefits. Cooler temperatures, cooler ambient summertime temperatures. So we are planting the right trees in the right places that create microclimates. Microclimates
Great term.
Yeah, being, we have the macro climate of Phoenix that we all love at certain times of year and hate at other times of year. And then we can create microclimates that support, more sensitive species of plants that make your yard more habitable. One of the great benefits of, natural landscaping, regenerative, permaculture-based landscaping is that your yard is going to become an oasis. And everybody has sort of everybody falls on a different part of the spectrum of what they find beautiful. So some people want a wild jungle with like hidden spots. Other people want something nice and open, but there's a way to incorporate permaculture into every property. And my strong belief from the years of research and implementation practice that I've done with permaculture is that when we learn how to live in harmony with nature, to work within nature's rules, we benefit. We get food. We get, water savings. Like you said, a lot of people don't know this is something I really love to educate people on. You don't have to rip out all of your lawn, because the city of wherever you live is offering an incentive to put in gravel instead. You can keep some of your lawn, the part that you actually use, if you use any of it, and you can reduce the water usage of that lawn by up to 90% by increasing the soil organic matter to 10 to 15%. Most people don't even, when's the last time a landscaper talked to you about your soil organic matter?
Right. Well, and so you brought up some important things, and I'm speaking directly to the people that are in Gilbert, Buckeye, and the city of Phoenix, your water rates are going up. Which, if you're not looking for strategies to reduce your water consumption, you're kind of missing the boat. The other thing that I like to talk to people about, I like to ask them a question when we have this conversation: how often do you use your front or backyard? How often do you actually go into it? And before we transformed our backyard, we never would. Now we eat meals outside. We go outside all the time. So it transforms that space into a livable space.
Yeah.
So my question is, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah. That's really the best question, is like, you know, I work on the sales side of the business for the most part. So I spend a lot of time just having conversations with people at different parts of their journey of figuring out, you know, how to start removing certain sections of their lawn, all the way to this lady I spoke with today who's already had incredible success with gardening in her yard and recognizes the opportunity to take it to the next level with permaculture. But for the people who are earlier in the journey, the people who are considering maybe less natural options for their landscape upgrades, yeah, the question is like, look at all of these benefits, from the food to the shade to the wildlife to and like, why wouldn't you do that? And yes, it can feel like it's going to take more maintenance than the sort of xeriscaped, you know, super low maintenance, super low water use system. But actually, when you design with the right plants in the right places, you understand how perennials work, how annuals work, you know, and you're composting all of that plant matter right there on property, whether we're helping them to do that or whether you're doing it yourself. It can actually, over the course of time, be lower maintenance and lower water use.
Well, and here's the thing. So even if it's more, I mean, you're saying it's not, and I'm sure you're right. Even if it's more, your attitude changes when you're doing maintenance on a usable space versus maintenance on a space you never use.
Yes.
It's absolutely incredible. So if you're out there doing the hot rock dance to get to the trees and it's 1,000,000 degrees versus something that's cool and inviting, you find yourself not minding being out there. You brought something up. Now I have to ask this question because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just aren't knowledgeable about what you're talking about. I want you to kind of think through the advice you'd give somebody that's just dabbling their toes in. So I meet you for the first time. You look at my yard. It's all gravel, front and backyard, and we're having this conversation. And I love your answer of saying, let's phase this in. What are some of the first things you talk about when you start phasing in, or for some of the first steps that you would want people to consider?
Yeah, such a great question. The most important first step is to have a plan. That's why we always start with a paid design engagement. You know, the more of a plan you can build ahead of time, the better. Now, the first principle of permaculture is to observe and interact with the space as it already is. So if you're doing the hot rock dance, you're already observing and interacting with your space, and you know this spot gets hot as this time of day, and this spot over there actually stays kind of cool. Maybe you've got a north side, a section on the north side of your house that almost never gets sun, and maybe there's the AC condensate, line dripping water 24/7 into that spot. So maybe you've got some moss growing, and you can start to pay attention to what grows well or doesn't grow where, and all of that. Once you have started to put some hours of intentional observation into a space, I mean, it's get rid of the gravel wherever you possibly can. Start throwing down wood chip mulch everywhere that you possibly can. And a lot of people will go, my HOA is never going to allow that. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you just have to fight them. You just have to kind of push for what you want and what you believe is right. We've had customers and we've had personal experiences with HOAs backing down and finally saying, okay, you know what? Like, this isn't this big of a fight. So replacing gravel with wood chips wherever possible, planting simple, like drought tolerant, either desert native or desert adapted plants to start getting like functioning living root systems through the space, even if it's just going to be a cover crop, something temporary.
Okay, so let's I think you brought up a very good point, and we actually just transitioned in our backyard from stone to wood chips, and one of the biggest surprises was we still have stone in the front yard because we're getting ready to have that fight, But we noticed there's no weeds on the mulch side.
Yeah.
There's weeds on the gravel side. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
My wife said, "Oh, we're going to be pulling weeds." I'm like, I think you're going to be surprised. Not only that, we had a plant that died, unfortunately, and we pulled back the mulch. The mulch is such a great moisture barrier. It really does hold the moisture in. And you're like, oh, just around the plant? Nope, it's pretty much that whole area. So that's where it was so counterintuitive. It holds moisture. One of the things that people might not know, and I want you to talk about this a little bit, is by creating that barrier, you're actually you're protecting the biology in the soil.
Yeah.
Because you're not letting it get an insanely high temperature. So I totally agree with you on that. Aesthetically, I think it looks better. But something that you also said that kind of piques my interest, when we made this transition, we have 2 gardens on the side of our house.
Okay.
Never, ever, ever, ever in a million years did we think we would use the sides of our yards. So I would say by doing what you're describing, they can actually utilize every square inch of their yard.
Yeah.
So kind of talk to us about that, where when you go in, it is about usable space, and you really recapitulating the parts of the yard with the air conditioner, or where the trash cans are, where everything's functional, and some of the things you've seen go into those areas.
Sure. The 2 first things that we look at when we're approaching a design is water flow and people flow. So
I love that.
And we don't want to obstruct the people flow, and we definitely don't want to obstruct water flow. In fact, grading and drainage is a huge part of what we do. A lot of people will come to us after they've graded, and we end up having to regrade because 99% of people in the grading business, home builders, whatever, they're just trying to get the water as fast as possible away from the house and out to the street or to wherever. And no, we want to retain the water in the landscape. Another critical step to the
okay, that's very interesting because you're right. I've bought new homes, and that is exactly the message. Is how is that accomplished? Is it wattles? Like or a little shallow? How do you accomplish that?
Yeah. Swales are like the first thing that usually people who have like dabbled in permaculture or something, they're familiar with swales. If you're not familiar with swales, a swale is like, imagine a horizontal line wrapping around a hill. So as the water's going down that hill, it's being captured anywhere in that swale, in that trench. And then you're retaining water in the landscape. And then, any additional water that's falling further down the watershed is going to get captured in a further swale further down. We use a lot of arroyos, which are channels that meander through the landscape, and we use a lot of basins. So we'll take, we install gutters, downspouts. We can put in a tank if we want to have active rainwater storage that can be used to power irrigation, like in garden beds, fruit trees, whatever. But also, without the tank, or even at the overflow of the tank, the water is eventually going to go into the landscape. And so you always want to plan the overflow. You always want a drainage plan. And so sending the water through the landscape, we want to slow it down, spread it out to allow it to sink into the ground. The more water we can retain on a property, the more drought proof it's going to be in the coming decades here in this urban desert.
And you're talking about the functionality, but honestly, I see different elevation in landscaping. Elevation equals interest.
Yeah,
it's uniqueness,
totally.
And so to have the 2 come together, it's great. And a lot of the houses you see, front or backyard, they're flat. They have no points of interest that draw you to it. And I honestly, I don't care. I mean, I care what you plant. But if you're relying on the plants to be the points of interest, you're losing a feature.
Yeah.
If you look at a landscape, it's like that. It doesn't look natural. So with all of the elevation features that you're talking about to capture water, the functionality actually does equal aesthetic beauty.
Totally.
Which is great to see. You also brought something up too with the gutters. For whatever reason, I don't know why houses in Arizona don't have gutters, but you're right. It's such a great feature. And when people argue, well, we're in Arizona, we don't get enough rainwater, I would totally disagree. So to have a rain catchment system, if that's something that you can fold into your landscaping, it's a great feature.
Yeah.
How common is it for your clients to get rain catchment?
75%.
Oh wow!
Of our projects are rainwater like have some component of rainwater, and then the other 25% either already have an existing rainwater harvesting system, or it's like really difficult to do, or we're like, okay, fine, you want to do permaculture stuff, but we really can't convince you of the benefit of rainwater. That's a small percentage. The thing that I like to tell people is like the most important place to be intentional about your rain capture is in a desert.
Oh, absolutely.
So even though we get on average only 7 inches of rain per year, I mean, this year, 2025, has been incredibly rainy. We're at 9 inches on average in different parts of the valley. But even just 5 inches in a year on your roof surface, getting intentionally captured and routed, as well as the surrounding landscape, equals tens of thousands of gallons of rainwater. And a lot of people don't know that rainwater is the best water, even better than flood irrigation, because of the dissolved nitrogens, because of the pH balance. I mean, there's a reason why, you can be watering your plants all year long and they grow a little bit, but then, we get a quarter inch of rain and everything puts on inches of growth. It seems like overnight.
Yeah, and honestly, and I'm going to go back to what I said about Gilbert, Buckeye, and the city of Phoenix. In some cases, the increase in water rates is dramatic.
Yeah.
So it's a small investment that you're going to save over time.
Yeah.
And this is something that's more commonplace with utilities, especially in places where there's there's a water scarcity. The cost of water is increasing.
Yeah.
Something else I want to talk to you about is, and then we're going to get to your upcoming program, is kind of the idea of looking at the types of plants you plant, because yes, plants are beautiful, they're aesthetic, but I think they should serve a higher purpose, which is to feed people. So let's talk about the household, but then let's venture into the community. So why should you select fruit-bearing trees, shrubs, bushes, vines versus the non? And for me, it's simple economics. I'm going to get a return on my investment.
Yeah.
And more importantly than that, especially with all the new pesticides and contaminants that are out there, nothing's foolproof, but I know what's going in the food that I'm producing, from the soil all the way up. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and even if you're starting with soil that's been contaminated, there's a whole process called phytoremediation, where you can plant specific plants to pull out specific metals, petrochemicals. So over the course of time, using plants, you can actually completely restore soil.
Oh, wow.
But you've got plants that feed animals. You've got plants that feed wildlife, plants that feed, like us, fruit bearing, but you've got also pollinator plants that are feeding the pollinators, the birds, the bees, the hummingbirds, the bats, the moths, the pollinators that are drinking nectar. That is actually a food source for the wildlife that we so desperately need to bring back in. And then you've got plants that feed the soil. Right? So there's nitrogen fixation, there's biological processes, and most people don't understand the rhizosphere. They don't understand how plants convert sunlight into sugars and trade those sugars and carbohydrates to the soil microbiome for the nutrients that they then uptake. That's a fascinating process to get more familiar with. But really, the real return for ourselves as human beings is that, would you rather live in a gravel pit? Would you rather live in like the typical, if you look up like Phoenix Yard on Google Images, would you rather live in that, or would you rather live in a Garden of Eden? Like you said earlier, like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want to be able to go out to your yard year round and harvest food? Just like many people have basil or rosemary or whatever, like in small ways, you can have these homegrown herbs that you can add into your dishes. Now, imagine if every season of the year, you've got citrus, you've got stone fruit, you've got apples, you've got pomegranates, you've got olives, you've got pecans. Like, there's stuff for every part of the year. And to me, it's like, I don't want to live in a world where I have to rely on a grocery store and a commercial food system to feed me, to feed my future children. Like, that does not feel good to me.
Well, and I think people kind of miss the point when we transition the conversation from your house to the community.
Yeah.
And so when I agree with everything you said on that, but They don't understand that you could have the same experience in your community. There are communities in the United States where as you walk around, you could pick fruit. It's community property, which is great, versus, walking through. And yes, you get to enjoy the great landscaping, going from patch of grass to patch of grass, but being able to harvest fruit in your community for anybody. Any visitor, any community member is a great thing. So you've decided that you want to service the community and your clients by looking at buying wholesale fruit trees. Now, when you hear the prices of these fruit trees, you're going to be shocked. So let's talk a little bit about that. What's the process? What was the decision-making process? How did you find your partner? And why did you go through this process?
Yeah, great questions. And to kind of dovetail that with your point about like community abundance, there's like, my vision is not for every yard to produce everything, every private property to produce everything, because most of us can't fit everything into our yard, nor do we necessarily want to grow everything in our yard. But by creating strong community abundance, you can have a certain kind of citrus I don't have. I may have a certain kind of peach that you don't have. And, without getting into the sort of logistics of like cash-based or cash-free societies and bartering or whatever, the bottom line is that the more abundance we grow, the less we worry, the less we need to worry. And so that's really what got me going with this wholesale fruit tree program. I personally didn't want to pay $50 to $100 and whatever dollars for a single tree. I didn't have that kind of access to capital to pay for fruit trees, and I wanted wholesale pricing, but to buy wholesale.
And I'll say this too: $50 is the bottom. Yeah. So you're not going to see that at some of the nurseries. It could be $150 or more for a single tree. Yeah. And honestly, it costs that high. It is cost prohibitive. Yeah. So what are the prices of your trees?
Yeah. So everything is either $18 or $29. So
extremely accessible. What kind of fruit trees do you have?
We have apple, apricot, cherries. Believe it or not, cherries can grow in the low desert. We have apples, apricot, cherries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, figs, goji berries, which are extremely drought tolerant, jujubes, also very drought tolerant, the mulberry, of course, 3 different kinds of mulberries, nectarines, plums, pluots, quince, pomegranates. I'm definitely missing some, but we have grapevines, we have kiwi vines this year.
Oh wow!
And what we've done is we've created a selection that there is a tree for almost every region of Arizona. For example, pluots are very specific. They don't really grow well above zone 8. So I wouldn't recommend anybody in the Phoenix area, which is like zone 9 to 10, try to grow a pluot unless you have extreme microclimate knowledge and can really baby that tree, but chances are you're not going to get it.
So just to clarify, you're not just selling trees to the Phoenix area, it's statewide.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. We want to expand beyond Phoenix because a lot of people outside of Phoenix don't have access to, they don't even have the $150 fruit trees that they want.
Right.
So yeah. And so we do this with a ton of community support. We have group orders in Prescott and Show Low, etc., that they come together, they all place their orders, and then we find 1 or 2 volunteers who can come to my place in Phoenix to pick up everybody's trees and take them back with them.
So how does this process work? I'm in Flagstaff or Phoenix. How do I start this process? And I can almost guarantee you are not going to get a better price. Yeah. So let's talk to us about the process. And something else I want you to talk about is why now? Why is December, January a great time to plant a fruit tree?
Yeah. So the reason we do this during this time of year is because the grower, Dave Wilson Nursery, which is the same nursery that supplies, the same grower that supplies pretty much all the deciduous fruit trees. There's a couple of others, but most of the time when you're buying a local fruit tree, you're going to see a Dave Wilson Nursery tag on it. They ship these trees bare root during the winter time. That means there's no soil. It's a stick with, it's a dormant stick with roots at the bottom of it. And you're going to plant that thing. And I'm about to publish a video on how to plant a bare root fruit tree. you're gonna plant that thing while it's still dormant or like just barely starting to wake up. That's why we do this during the cold season, so that they're dormant and they wake up in the place where they're gonna spend the rest of their life, hopefully. And
you honestly do this because it's going to give them the best chance for survival to plant now, right?
It's like the best way for a tree to wake up early in the spring and get the most possible growth during its first spring in its new home, leading up to 100 during June, you know?
Yeah, so let's take this on a little bit further too. Great program, great services, but talk to us about some of the partnerships that you have here in the Valley, because you've done you participate in some community tree planting with some of the partners. Yeah. And then there's also a possibility that we might partner for the Skyfire Film Festival. Yeah. But let's talk about your partnerships now and the great work you're doing in the community.
Sure. I mean, the first partnership that comes to mind is the man who introduced us. So Christopher Macy with the Phoenix Food Forest Initiative, 35th Avenue in Fillmore. We're planting all over the easements, the city easements. If you're familiar with this podcast, you've probably already seen him. That's a great partnership. He's actually joining our board. I mean, our missions are identical, right? So it just made sense to continue to work more and more closely together. Other partnerships. So Galaxy Gardens is a local installer of rainwater harvesting systems and regenerative landscaping concepts. They've been doing this for years. I first met their founder, Clint, when he came over to my house to do a consult for my place in Gilbert. And we spent 2 hours jamming about the state of the world and everything. And over the course of time, you know, we've gotten closer and closer to the point where now we operate basically as a single company. So if you book a consult on galaxygardenszz.com or on permascaping.com, you're going to talk to me. And cool. The work is most likely going to be done by them, depending on regions. So that's our biggest partner. Is there anybody else that?
Well, and you just kind of sparked an interesting question in my mind. One of the things, I know we've talked a lot about residential, but there are schools that are looking to engage in this type of activity in businesses. Yeah. So have you done any work there? And the benefits are huge. If you're a company that has a green ideology or that's your mission, really that message should start at your doorstep. Yeah. People should look around and see the sustainability initiatives from what you decide to plant, how you harvest and preserve water. So what would be the benefits of a company reaching out to you and getting this kind of work done in order to kind of reinforce their branding or messaging?
I mean, if I'm a business owner, I want to provide spaces for my employees, my staff to.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, let's start with providing for our team. Imagine fresh homegrown fruit in the break room every day of the year. But you were talking more on like a grander scale.
It's some people have a sustainability the core value. Yeah. And for me, when I go up to a business that has that core value, and I don't see it at the doorstep, it makes me wonder: is this just something they say? Totally. Or is it something they're living by? If I walk up to a business and I see this is something that they're sustainable in how they use water, the plants that they plant, and how they design their workspace, that to me says, okay, it gives me a level of trust in what their messaging is. Yeah. So that was kind of my thought on that.
That's a great point. Another great example is like, so we're about to do a transformation project for the First United Methodist Church of Gilbert.
Oh, nice.
Over on Cooper and something. And it's going to be a massive demonstration project to their entire community, not only the tens of thousands of cars that drive past every week or whatever the stats are, but also to their members, their congregation. And the biggest players in our ecosystems need to be leading the process of transformation. They need to be putting their budget, and you're totally right that there's a lot of companies out there that will tout sustainability. They'll, promote the hell out of Arbor Day or whatever. But I think they just don't realize what's possible on their own grounds. One thing I do see a lot in commercial landscaping, now that I'm aware of it, is I do see a lot of like drainage basins where rainwater will accumulate on the roof, on the property, whatever, and they have these big basins with trees planted around them, at least in certain parts of town.
Yeah.
And I think that the more of those kinds of businesses, like corporations, et cetera, we can get on board with leading the charge of this kind of like this homegrown revolution, this permascaping revolution, the more we will see people doing it in their own spaces.
Well, and the big thing for me, and this is what I tell people, is you've heard a lot on ideology, you've heard a lot on aesthetics, but there is an economic savings. A lot of companies don't understand that by keeping their practices the same, the way that they've been doing things, it might be more expensive.
Yeah.
So what you're providing is actually offering a water savings or savings that eventually this investment will pay for itself.
Yeah, just like companies investing in solar.
Right.
Right?
Same thing.
Look at water the same way. And we could get into like building design as well for like reduction of power use, right? Like how do you design a building as an architect, as a builder? How do you design buildings such that they passively cool during the summertime? What kinds of building materials are you using? There's so much that I want to get into on that side.
We're wrapping up, but there are two stakeholder groups that I would encourage to reach out to you. One, our community gardens. This is something where people love the idea of growing, composting, vermicomposting, but this is really what you're describing, a lesson in sustainability.
Yeah.
So why not turn your community garden into a laboratory? Partner with you, design systems in a community garden where you can learn to take those lessons at home. So it serves more than a function. And I'll be honest, a lot of community gardens, they struggle with interest. Once they get past a general gardening skill set, there's really not much else. And it's that sense that beyond the sense of community, which is important, but to have something where they can create an area for people to more understand how to apply lessons of sustainability are important. The other thing I'd say to all schools out there that are teaching sustainability or STEM, what a great approach. You can redesign how you're planting. You can redesign your drainage, your water systems, so that kids actually can learn something that they can take with them into their careers in the future. So any schools out there, any community gardens out there, think about updating your systems to be more functional and use this as a way to teach sustainability versus just learning how to plant.
And one of the ways that we can do this is through what's called a Permablitz. So this is, you're not hiring a crew to come and transform your landscape for you. You're actually involving your entire community in the process. So a Permablitz, on a small scale, is your 10 closest friends, family, neighbors coming over on a Saturday and a Sunday and helping to transform your space, getting a lot of work done, through the principle of many hands make light work. Community gardens, schools, churches, these kinds of places have access to even greater networks. And so a Permablitz, what we're doing is we're offering the Permablitz model on kind of a hybrid consulting basis where, you're going to hire us, or if we can get some kind of grants or whatever, but like we need to get paid to do the design thinking and the planning. And then, I need to pay Clint to be able to go out there and supervise. I mean, he's willing to volunteer, but I want to pay him, right? To actually supervise the group. Because what a lot of people don't necessarily realize is that it actually takes a lot of, this might seem obvious, but there's a lot of specific knowledge to applying the principles of permaculture in urban landscaping. Like the way that you're going to design an irrigation system, the way that you're going to plant certain things. Like somebody like Clint, who's been doing this for years and years and years, he's just learned the hard way. And he has, like, for example, swing pipe. People do not know about swing pipe. It's a thicker drip tubing that's easier to work with than PVC and lasts just as long as PVC. That's just one example. So the Permablitz model is something to tap into for sure, and we really want to get involved with schools and the like.
So I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Please make sure to like and subscribe. If you look at the description of the video, you'll have links to both your organizations and also a flyer. I think I talked you into extending your sale so you'll be able to get this further. But I'm going to leave you with one question. I want you to look out your window when you go home, or if you're a business owner or a school, look out your window and say, how usable is that space?
Yeah.
Not just in the summertime, just all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're not using that space, call this guy and make that space usable. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.